Landlords across the U.S. are facing an unprecedented increase in residential rental fraud. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting topic for you today, and it has to do with fraud, okay? Basically, I've been covering articles about how landlords are getting, defrauded by scamming tenants for quite a while. And, it's really becoming a bigger problem throughout the entire country. And part of it has to do with the fact that, hey, a lot of stuff now is, it's digital, it's online, it's on the internet. And that makes it easier for people to, steal identities. It makes it easier for, information to be found or taken. And, landlords are becoming the victims of these people who just want to use us, use our properties, steal our money, steal everything they can from us. And, it's a bad situation overall. So, right now, there's just a lot of different trends, a lot of different scams that are going around. And, I just wanted to cover those in one of these videos because, I want people to be aware of the problems that are out there for landlords. And that way, we can fight back. We can take precautions and figure out what we need to do to better protect ourselves, okay? So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Have you been a victim of any sort of fraud, okay? And I'm going to tell you a little story about a title fraud situation that I actually had just in the recent past. So now obviously I didn't lose any money in this situation, but there was a case of wire fraud that happened with the title company that I used to purchase my last two properties, right? And, it was kind of crazy. So here goes my story. So, I closed on my properties. In order to buy my properties, what I did was I put a home equity loan on two of my other properties, right? And so I got a large sum of cash. I used the grand majority of that cash for the down payment on my two new duplexes that I'm buying, right? But there was a small sum of about, I'd say $3,000 that was in excess of what was needed to close and what was needed as the down payment. So, they were going to send me a check for that $3,000, right? So I get the check in the mail and, I don't go to the bank immediately to cash it. I sit on it for a week or two, right? And I go to the bank, I, sign it over, deposit it, whatever, right? Well, check bounces. And I'm like, what the heck? The check from the title company bounces? What's going on here, right? So I call up the title company. I'm like, hey, this check for these excess funds, it bounced, okay? What's going on? And they're like, oh, well, we got an email from you giving us new wiring instructions for the excess amount, right? And we wired the money to that and then canceled the check. And I'm like, hey, I didn't give you guys any wiring instructions. I never emailed you. And now, at this point, right, they realized they had been scammed, okay? They had been caught up in, title fraud, right? Wire fraud. And, this is apparently a pretty big problem with these title companies, right? And so they apologized greatly to me and they sent me another check. That check was good. Okay. But, it led me to believe that, hey, these are problems that are going around right now. There's a lot of fraud situations going around right now. And you have to really, really be careful. Otherwise, you're going to get caught up and you could have lost a lot of money. Imagine, for example, if that check had been for more than just the $3,000, if it had been for $100,000, that's something I've thought about before. And, imagine if the title company was like, well, there's nothing we can do. You're just out that money, So yeah, I'm glad that, at least in my situation, it worked out for me, but it still hurt that title company and it could have ended up really, really bad. But anyway, let me get into this article because it has some other different little fraud situations mentioned in it. This article is coming from Newsweek.com and it says, fraud trends in residential real estate. The rapid digital transformation introduced more convenience at a time when we needed to be isolated at home, but it also made it harder than ever to detect fraud with outdated tools. All right, let's get into it. In early October, police arrested a woman in New York City accused of forging housing paperwork, tax documents, and pay stubs, among others, to obtain several apartments on behalf of gang members under investigation by the FBI. Among the false phone numbers she used was one linked to a man shot and killed in Queens last year. In one of the apartments in Brooklyn, they found 5 guns linked to gang members. Investigators say the primary purpose of the scheme was to store contraband. When they abandoned the apartments, property managers and owners of these rental units were stuck with unpaid rent, utility bills, and perhaps the most damaging, a reputation for criminal activity and easy for fraudsters to get into. Yeah, and I think I did a video covering that situation right there. That was, just absolutely crazy as well. So I'll have to look it up. If I find it, I'll put a link up in the description. The rapid digital transformation introduced more convenience at a time when we needed to be isolated at home, but it also made it harder than ever to detect fraud with outdated tools. To protect their business against the economic impacts brought on by the current environment, property managers and landlords must take the necessary precautions. Staying ahead of fraud in the digital age means we need to fight technology with technology. Fraud is on the rise. In September, a 28-year-old man pled guilty to wire fraud, false representation of a social security number, and aggravated identity theft after police found him renting an apartment in East Boston under the identity of a person from North Carolina. The same identity he used to apply for a $40,000 loan from the Economic Injury Disaster Fund. That same month, police arrested a man in Atlanta with multiple warrants who had used stolen identities to buy expensive cars and rent apartments in several states. Enter arrested multifamily rental fraud into a search engine and find even more stories just like these. And yeah, the stories that you find about these sort of situations are pretty much nonstop, okay? There's always somebody out there trying to scam us because they know, hey, we've got something that is worth money, okay? And that is our housing, the housing that we provide. They will move into that housing and just scam, get as much free rent as possible. And if you're in one of those states where it's hard to evict tenants, then you could end up stuck with this person for months or years on end. And the pandemic showed people just how bad it is, especially for small mom and pop landlords who can't deal with these sort of losses. Okay, so let me skip down a little bit in this and let me see here. If they have anything in this article that says what we can do to help fight. Okay, so down at the bottom of the article, there's a paragraph and it starts with like this. Fight technology with technology. Property managers need to outsmart the efforts of digital fraudsters using technology with more sophisticated technology. The industry can no longer rely on their eyes and ears alone to detect the subtle differences between legitimate and fraudulent digital documents. Look for multi-layered technology solutions that can authenticate documents, integrate online and offline identity information, and track device registrations and IP addresses. If you can find some sort of authentication software that can, verify that, hey, these driver's licenses that, you're getting from your tenant are real, that, this is really the person, you need to be doing as thorough of background checks as you possibly can. Okay, this is no longer the time when you can just, I'm going to judge this person by their personality and just what they wrote on the rental application. Nope. Don't trust anybody, I say more like this. Trust, but verify, okay? That means that, you call all the references, call beyond the references. If somebody says, hey, I work for McDonald's down the street, here is my manager's phone number, don't just call that the phone number that they gave you, right? Literally, look up online the phone number for the McDonald's, call the McDonald's through the publicly listed number and then ask to speak with the manager to verify if that person works there. Okay, because all sorts of scams have happened that way. If somebody says, "Hey, this is my name and my my true identity," well, you need to have multiple forms of identification for a person. Not just saying, "Hey, here's a driver's license," but, "Hey, here's my driver's license and here's a second picture ID," right? And then try to verify that and make sure that you have the actual person's name. Now, I know that things are getting more sophisticated, more complicated, and it's going to be even harder going forward for landlords not to get scammed, right? But we have to take as much action as possible to make sure that we don't lose money. Like I said, it could end up being tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And in the example I gave you with my whole, wire fraud issue with the title company, it could have been absolutely devastating. Okay, so I'm putting this out there because I want landlords to just take the precautions necessary to protect their investments.